What the hell is that book? Hello humans, my name is Dael Kingsmill and this is a video. Ooh. Recently over on Twitter.com, we were talking about... What the hell were we talking about? That was it. It started with Justice, who, I mean, if you haven't been watching, Matt Colville invited me amongst a bunch of his buds to play in a 4E game, a short adventure that he was running in 4E on Fantasy Grounds over on Twitch. We've been playing that. It's a ton of fun. Justice is in that little adventure with me. Justice started a discussion on Twitter about the level range of Dungeons & Dragons. The question he pitched was, do you think D&D should have fewer levels? If so, where should character progression cap off? Now, I began this process of thinking in a zone of there should be 10 levels. I say that because when I'm designing my own games and hacking games and stuff, I often get to about level 10 and then it becomes a real struggle to keep coming up with cool stuff for people to get when they level. And so I kind of go, well, why not take out all the filler bits and just scrunch all the cool stuff down to 10 levels? You know, you look at any of the classes in the 5e Player's Handbook, and it feels like there's about 10 levels worth of cool stuff, and the rest is just, you know, levels where you feel like you didn't really get anything. Unless you're a monk. That's where I started. And then I got to thinking, opinionated and thinks too much. I said it in like the second or third D&D video I ever made, and I stand by it. I got to thinking, what if D&D just didn't have any levels? Stay with me, please. Please stay with me. What if progression in Dungeons & Dragons was not level-based? Let's think it through. Let's talk it through. As it currently stands, in Dungeons & Dragons, you pick your character class, and every level you get something from that class. At a specific level, often level 3, you choose your character's subclass, and it branches off into usually 2 or 3 different choices of specialization within that character class. But both in the case of classes and of subclasses, it's a very rigid ladder that you climb. There are very rarely points of choice in this. It's you make your choice at the beginning of the game and you stick with it. And even if you choose to multiclass, then you're just climbing 2 rigid ladders at the same time. Now let's imagine a reality without levels. Real quick, let me explain how I imagine that it would work, and then we can talk about the benefits. The structure would basically just remove the levels, right? Gaining XP or, you know, using milestones to mark progress, those still exist. It's just that there's no stage at which you level up. And then over time, you can take those experience points or those, narrative tokens, milestone tokens, and trade them in for cool new character features. I imagine that the character features are probably still class specific, so it'll be like, you know, if you are a barbarian, these are the character features that you can choose from, and some of those features might have prerequisites. You know, for example, the fighter class, in order to take superior critical, there's probably a prerequisite that you've already taken improved critical. Some abilities might need a little flag on them that say that you can only take them a maximum of X number of times. If we think of different spells as features, then you can just make higher level spells cost more than lower level spells. Ooh, there's a benefit right there. The fact that we have spell levels and character levels has always been confusing when I'm trying to explain it to new players. But if the character levels don't exist, if the character doesn't have levels, then the only levels are the spell levels. So there's a couple little things to make sure that a character can't just immediately leap to the best and coolest thing. They can't just immediately take the wish spell. But on the whole, the structure is more flexible. Progression becomes non-linear and player directed, rather than this rigid ladder that everyone must climb one step before the next. Let's talk about some benefits, shall we? First of all, it cuts out the boring levels. None of those useless ribbon ability levels, none of those levels where you're like, oh, well, I guess I just get hit points. Character diversity and agency. If you want to play a monk twice in a row, you're going to have the freedom to make sure that they feel different, even at low levels, because the 2 characters are not going to have the same progression path. If 2 players want to play rangers in the same party, they have a guarantee that they can be built completely differently from one another. Speaking of rangers, you get to custom build your ranger specifically for what your tastes are. No more of that, oh, the rangers don't have enough spells. Oh, rangers shouldn't have spells at all. None of that. If you like a magic ranger, you can have one. If you want your ranger to be more like Aragon, they don't gotta take any spells. This kind of a structure can also work to keep both min-maxes and hardcore story players happy. The min-maxers can figure out cool little combos to their heart's content. The narrative peeps can look at the stuff that's happened in the game so far and pick an ability that they think matches where their character is and where they're going and who they want them to be. Probably my favorite benefit of this thought exercise is that the campaign ends when the story does. By which I mean the very act of having a level 20 that is the last one provided in the book, that makes it feel like that's the end. So you feel like you should keep playing until you hit level 20. There's this tug that tells you that you shouldn't finish the story now just because it feels right narratively, because the characters haven't reached their full potential yet. Or alternatively, you reach level 20 and you feel like, well, now we have to stop, because that's it, that's the last of the levels. Even though you feel like you've got more of that juice in you still want to keep going. Of course, you don't actually literally have to keep playing to level 20 or stop when you reach level 20, rules as written. But because the game is structured this way, it encourages you to think like that. If you get rid of levels, the game ends when the story does. Because no one's keeping track in that kind of a way. The story comes to a close and each of the characters has bought themselves 11 features worth. Still feels like an ending. The characters have bought themselves 21 levels worth of features, but they still gotta go and fight Ukatoa. Good to go, baby! This whole thing might sound like it's more complicated to explain to a new player, and maybe it is, but I don't think it'd be that tough. It basically turns it into a marketplace. If a player can understand how to buy equipment, they can understand how to buy new features. I also think it's worth noting that a really significant thing for getting a new player engaged with the game, helping them to learn the system, is that interest and investment in their character's high concept. A player who loves the concept of a ranger, but doesn't like that they have magic spells, for example, that player's gonna be taken out of the fantasy just a little bit. The easiest way to ensure a new player's investment is to give them a really cool, flavorful ability right from the get-go. What's the best way to achieve that? Let them pick. You may have noticed that bits of this have stuff in common with 4E Dungeons and Dragons. And that's true, it's a little bit like picking your powers, with the exceptions that your choice of features is largely untethered. You pick what you want when you want. As long as you can afford it, as long as you meet the prerequisites, you're golden. And two, of course, the fact that levels don't exist. The other thing that I think is really similar to is actually how the Warlock Eldritch Invocations work in 5e. Imagine that, but for everyone, and not tied to levels. In case you've somehow missed it thus far, this video is a ponderance. What if levels didn't exist? You know what it's structured like? It's structured like university classes. In Australia, at least. I don't know how it works for all the rest of you. Here are all the classes that you can take at D&D University. Pick which ones you're gonna take. Make sure that you meet the prerequisites. That's it. That's my thought exercise for the day. I hope that you found it interesting, at the very least. I'm quite taken with the concept, personally. Apart from that, what's been going on? Like I said, the 4E Twitch games with MCDM and friends over on twitch.tv/DailyDale. There's a link in the description. That adventure is still ongoing, so you can catch up on the VODs if you want to, or just jump into a game when we play next. There's a lot of very cool wibbly wobbly things going on. The Lich and Dragons videos from Monster Madness are still coming. Life is just kicking my butt a little bit. Apart from that, I do believe that's it. I'm done. Email this to your grandma, and I'll see you some other time. I've got a white light bulb in one light and a yellow warm light bulb in the other one. It's kind of giving me Twitch streamer lighting here. Could be worse.